we'll get going. I think a few people still joining, but we've got a fair amount of content to get through today. So we'll get cracking, and we'll be sure to leave time for any questions at the end. If people have stragglers want us to recap anything. But for those of you who are here, thank you very much for coming. Today we're talking all things integrated marketing. So we'll go through what integrated marketing is as a concept, what an integrated campaign might look like, why it's important, how it's been used by the people on this call and others in the past. Then we'll go through a few tips and tricks of how to ensure an integrated campaign is working as hard as it can, specifically talking on data and creative. We'll talk a little bit about sustainability, and then we'll finish off with the ever joyous topic of marketing attribution when you've got loads of channels working away for you. So first of all, we'll start off with some intros. So I'm Tom, I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at Webmart. And for those of you who don't know, Webmart are a print and offline marketing agency. And we've just started over the last couple of years moving into more creative data and some digital offering as well, which is super exciting for us. And we're delighted today to be joined by Louise and Laura from Celestia and Interfora. So Louise, do you want to give a quick intro to you and Celestia?
Yeah, hi, so I'm Louise. I'm the Senior Digital Marketing Manager here at Celestia. So my background is technical SEO, but I've worked across a number of specialisms in my career. The types of clients that we've got, B2C, B2C, so wide kind of variety there. A little bit about Celestia. So we're proudly kind of B Corp certified. We've been B Corp since 2020. It's our mission to kind of help scale brands and inspire them to kind of transform the lives of people across the planet. So it's kind of planet first digital marketing. That's our motto.
Fantastic. Something that we like a lot of Webmart. So good stuff. And Laura from Interfora.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Laura and I'm the Senior Insight Manager at Interfora. So unsurprisingly, with my job title, I am very into the data side of looking at integrated campaigns. And I wanted to start with a bit of an introduction about a couple of our brands that we have. So whilst many people on this call will be familiar with Interfora, you might not be aware that we also have a brand called Flying Flowers. And Flying Flowers is a very different proposition to Interfora, not least because the gifts are sent by post rather than Interfora, where it's fulfilled by a florist network. And the differences between the brands mean that we have a different customer profile between them, who respond to different marketing channels. And as such, we've been running some interesting integrated campaigns with Flying Flowers, which is where I'll be focusing on some of the examples that we'll be talking through today.
Fantastic, great stuff. So we've got a bit of offline traditional marketing side from me, a bit of digital side from Louise, and client side from Laura. So we've got the full mix, hopefully, of what makes up an integrated marketing campaign. So to kick off with, I think it's probably best we define what we see integrated marketing as, because there are tons of terms out there, multi-channel, omni-channel. What do we mean? What does it mean for you, Laura, as from a client side when you hear the term integrated marketing campaign?
Yeah, I don't think there is one clear definition of what it is. And I think it's partly because it can be really varied in terms of their complexity. So sometimes it can be just a case of ensuring that you have consistent creative and messages across the different touch points that you're using within a journey. But for me, where you can really start to unlock the power of an integrated campaign, and I think work on an integrated campaign, is through the use of data. So I'm going to take everyone back to 2020 for a minute, which I know nobody wants to go back there, but it provides a bit of context for some of the work that we're doing with Flying Flowers, because like many companies during the pandemic, we paused and pulled back on a lot of our marketing activity. And for Flying Flowers, it actually coincided with a time where we were planning on pulling back on our direct mail activity anyway, to spend some time evaluating the role that it played within the customer journey. When we restarted the direct mail activity, we first reintroduced it very much as a piece of solus activity. So we weren't actually linking it to any other channels. So definitely not an integrated campaign. But one of the early results that we found when we started running it through tracking where our customers were responding through is that they were coming through PPC, so Google paid search, and in particular through our brand terms as well. And it makes sense, right? When you think about the journey, what we've done is we've made a customer aware of us within the marketing funnel. When they go online, they're more likely to search for flying flowers. And we all know at the moment what's happening with Google, that they're doing everything they can to make you click on the paid links. So it's great we've got them through to site, but it wasn't great when we were paying additional marketing costs. So what we started to do was expand the campaign out, and that's where it started to become more of an integrated campaign. And at its simplest level, it was adding on a follow-up email. So we were pushing the data through to our email provider, or our ESP, otherwise known as, and that allowed us to follow up with an email that had a very similar creative, the same discount code, same messaging to customers who had received the direct mailings. So very simple example in the first instance. But what we started to do as time has gone on is started to build out that journey and understand when people are purchasing, we'll remove them from the email campaign. If they've not purchased, we've built it out and put in more follow-up prompts. And that's where we're using our data in a smarter way to create an integrated campaign. And it's still a relatively simple example at this point, just using two channels. But where you can start to get more complex with it is using some of the integrations with email service providers, the things such as Google Adwords, social channels, and start to build that consistency of messaging across the different campaigns. So I think just from those examples that I've given, it shows that it's quite varied in terms of defining an integrated campaign, but it also doesn't have to be all singing or dancing. It can be as simple as starting to connect to your data to use two different channels.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think you touched on some of the key benefits there to integrated campaigns on the attribution side. So obviously just doing a direct mail campaign, if you operated in silos, in marketing silos, the PPC guys who've seen a massive uplift in traffic and conversions are all rubbing their hands together, demanding more budget, because it looks like on the graphs that they're doing amazingly well. And the poor guys doing the DM who've driven all that traffic to the PPC, they're saying, well, it's not worked, I'm sorry. So in the basic example you've given there of integrating email with DM, helping with that attribution, as well as, and I'm sure it had a positive impact on response rates across the campaign as a whole.
Yes, yeah.
Great. And Louise, from your perspective, would you agree with that as a way of looking at integrated marketing?
Yeah, so I think one of the benefits of those integrated marketing campaigns that we find in the agency is that since 2020 it's been a lot harder. A lot of us are working from home and things like that, so it's about making sure that you stay in contact with your colleagues and things like you just mentioned, Tom, the silos of if the PPC person is just working on PPC and SEO is just working on SEO, and you're not kind of talking and not sharing that data and everything like that, you can find that you're not actually understanding the full impact of your integrated marketing campaign. And with a lot of our clients, we do tend to kind of suggest there are a number of channels that we'll look at. So, it will be kind of digital PR, SEO, pay-per-click, and, social, paid social. So we do most of our clients are on that kind of more integrated level where there are a number of marketing channels that we're kind of pushing out.
Fantastic.
So staying up to date with the data makes our lives a lot easier.
Yeah, and that's the exact approach that we take at Webmart, and we see data and creative as kind of being the two pillars that sit in the middle of all of these different marketing channels that you use to execute. Because if you can get those right, if you get the rich data in a usable format and the consistent creative across the board, then you've got the kind of raw materials you need to execute those kind of integrated campaigns. I think that leads us quite on nicely to why integrated marketing campaigns are important, and how they can be used in different ways. And one way that we've seen it used quite frequently is when the kind of individual silos have reached a plateau. So where they've they've done all they can on paid social and got their CPA down to a great level, and they can't improve, they can't drive it any further, just looking at that channel in isolation. And I wonder if either of you've got any examples of where you've been up against that, potentially from Louise, from your perspective in a PPC and SEO perspective, and Laura, from your perspective as on a brand side, looking across the marketing team, where they've kind of reached their limit within their channel and what they can control, but through integrating other channels, they've been able to kind of overcome that plateau and continue to improve.
I think, from my point of view, something that we see a lot of is when clients come in and they're, doing a lot of SEO work and things like that. And as we know, with search engine optimization, that's more of a longer tail game. You're not going to see those instant rewards, and they've reached that plateau. They're putting that money into getting it there, but they're still not getting the leads in straight away that they really require to get that return on, investment and everything. So that's where we can come in, and adding pay-per-click and elements such as that can then help you kind of boost your the conversions or the inquiries that they need to kind of really help to level up, take them to that next level, and then start investing more in the marketing channels. I mean, we've had quite a few clients come on recently, and I can talk through a couple of examples in more detail now, or do you want to kind of?
Yeah, Fab, no, go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the clients that came on was a building supply, so national kind of building supplies, and what they needed help with was just kind of leveling up their whole kind of marketing effort. They were seeing that their ROAS was kind of 200%. They weren't getting that return on ad spend that they really required. So kind of we had a strategy that was a bit threefold. So first, obviously, having that organic search visibility, helping with technical SEO, both on-site and off-site. Also, because it was building supplies where they had obviously the merchant centres, local SEO then formed a really strong part of that, because then that's kind of joining up your online marketing and the offline. Again, Google Ads, so paid, really formed a big part of that as well, making they weren't getting that return on the ad spend they required, so kind of making it really profitable, rebuilding that campaign from the ground up. And then obviously the content on the site, so content and SEO we see as a bit separate. So technical SEO, that's quite a different bag, whereas creating that content, looking at the landing pages from a content point of view, but also looking at the blogs and everything like that, but then user experience on those key landing pages, because at the end of the day, if you're sending people via paid channels to a landing page that's not converting very well because it doesn't have what the user needs, then you've spent that money on that click, but at the end of the day you're going to lose out because they're still not going to convert. So really analyzing, are the call to actions right, have we got enough content there and everything. So they came on board, I think it was about 4 years ago. Within the first year we saw excellent growth, and then we started to see kind of year-on-year growth. Online revenue grew year-on-year. I think the first year we got them on board, it grew by £500,000, so that was around 2018. So we really did see that big boost in being able to make all of these channels kind of work with each other. Organic revenue went up 47% year-on-year, paid revenue went up 53% year-on-year. So we really did see that massive increase, and we brought down that return on advertising spend from to 870%. So it did really, we did see some great results with that, really.
Oh, yeah, it's a really good example of taking it from where the sounds like the client, when they were originally were doing it in that kind of siloed way that we've mentioned a couple of times already. But then you've linked organic SEO, PPC, content marketing, landing pages and customer journeys all into that marketing mix, and taking that holistic view, linking them all together, and a result of going from 200% ROAS to 800 and whatever it was percent is I'm sure they're a happy customer.
Yeah.
And Laura, I don't know if you have any examples from your side, from a Flying Flowers perspective.
I think the main examples where we've seen the uplift is actually from the offline activity. We as a result will have seen the benefits within online, but where we've really been tracking it is the direct mail results. So you mentioned earlier about, had we seen some of the uplifts from making some of these changes, and absolutely yes, we have. So to put it in context, in comparison from that first Solus mailing to what we're doing now, where we're putting it into more of a journey, we've seen over 100% uplift in the incrementality per mailed. So that's your uplift versus the control group, and that's a huge uplift to be doubling the incremental response rate just by starting to integrate these campaigns together and be thinking more about the customer journey is huge. But it shows the benefits you can get from taking those steps. The other thing that Louise has just made me think of, that we started to introduce, where we saw benefits through taking people to tailored landing pages, it's through adding QR codes into our direct mailing. So the QR code had the biggest comeback during the pandemic. And one of the challenges that we have with offline and online activity is, how do you create some of that consistency between the journey? And it was a really simple thing for us to do, to add the QR code onto the DM, but by encouraging people to scan that, we could take them to a landing page which referenced the direct mail at the top of it, which featured the discount code at the top of it, and get them using that code rather than doing things such as bouncing off to affiliate sites, which is a journey that we quite often see happening as well.
Fantastic. And you kind of hinted on it there, that through looking at holistically at a marketing campaign, you can also avoid double paying. Which I know is something that all marketers want to avoid. You don't want to pay for a customer twice if you can help it. And that example you gave there of being able to get the piece of DM, that's the piece that converts them, ensuring that you don't then drive them to go and Google Flying Flowers and then pay for the click as well, when bidding on your branded search terms, and driving them straight to a personalized landing page with the discount code there, so you can you get better attribution as a result, and B, you avoid paying twice for the same customer.
And then one of the next steps for us, which we are considering trialing, is actually using the customers as an exclusion within Google AdWords. So obviously with all the relevant permissions and so on, but you can pass the data anonymously over to Google, and you can put that as exclusions, where you say to Google, well, don't show them ads. And it's the same with Facebook. If you wanted to not show them ads because you want the media you've already paid for to work as hard as you can, that's something which we're considering trialing as well, and A/B testing and seeing what happens with our response rates.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's a big step away from this kind of traditional marketing view of, we're going to do an online campaign, we do a paid campaign, a mail campaign, and blah 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 to everyone, and we're going to cross our fingers to see what sticks. If we know that a particular customer responds to a particular channel best, and we can capture them or reactivate them or expand their spend with us using that channel, fantastic. Let's switch off all the others because it's not relevant to them. It might be that another customer responds best to multiple channels, and we can see how they've engaged with each channel along the way if we've got the right data. And then you start getting into the realms of kind of personal customer journeys that are optimized behind, towards how an individual best responds to your marketing. Which is a much more kind of efficient way, I guess. Now, I imagine quite a few people listening will hear all these big numbers and big jumps that we've seen with where you as a brand at Flying Flowers, and between myself and Louise with customers that we work with, and they'll be asking how do you start down the integrated marketing journey, because a lot of people are doing AdWords and PPC, paid social, some may be doing DM and door drop and things like that. And they'll be saying, we do all of these things. How do we take the first step in switching over to having kind of holistic integrated campaigns? So maybe Laura, if I can come to you first, because I'm sure years ago, you'll have done more traditional campaigns, and you've made the switch now over to those integrated campaigns. How did you go about doing that, and what were any kind of tricky bits that you had to overcome?
I think there are two big blockers, and we've talked about this quite a lot on the call, and I think it's probably resonating with people that are listening, which is the silos between the teams. If you're structured in a way where one team is looking at certain channels and another team is looking at other channels, it's always really difficult to overcome some of those silos, and I think that's where there's sometimes internal pieces of work that are needed to be really helping the different teams understand what campaigns are happening at what time, and to be encouraging people to be thinking customer first rather than be thinking channel first. It's thinking customer first, thinking about the journey that they're taking, and then adapting the channels to that. The second thing which I would recommend to anyone, if you're able to do this, is to try and link your web analytics data to your transactional data. And it doesn't need to be anything overly complex in the first instance, but if you can start linking your order information to your web analytics information, you suddenly have a lot more visibility about the digital channels that customers are actually using when they get to the point where they convert. And when you're joining that to your order and your customer information, you know who you've mailed, and you start to be able to link it back to their subsequent behavior. And as soon as you do that, it's like a treasure trove of information that you're getting into that, and you're suddenly unlocking a lot of insights, and you're suddenly able to take a lot of action from it as well. So that would be the one recommendation I'd make to anyone as a starting point, to start integrating your data and combining your marketing campaigns.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it often comes back to data and how much data you can have, how you can store it, how you can then use it in the right ways for the right people. And I don't know, Louise, from an agency perspective, I imagine something like us, you'll start working with a new customer, and you might be starting working with one person who looks after one area. And if they've not done integrated marketing before, it can be a bit of a journey that you need to go on with the customer to explain why we need to kind of broaden the remit to get the most out of the marketing spend.
Yeah, and I kind of love what you said, Laura, around the communication and everything like that. I think that it's really crucial, and just to smooth a few small things. If you do have a couple of people working, having just one team meeting every week, or start of the week, end of the week, what are you doing this week? Okay, and then on the Friday, how did that go? And then so PPC or SEO or whatever teams that you've got, actually understand the work that's being done and the effects that it could have on each other. But I mean, for us, when we get on a new client and everything like that, we're all talking about the importance of data. For us, kind of Google Analytics is that Bible that tells us everything. So the first thing that we always want to do with a client is just make sure what's entering their Google Analytics account is, first of all, valid. And so we always do, a Google Analytics audit on clients to just make sure, because we can make a few assumptions and it could be completely incorrect because the data that's entering the account is wrong. So, you're making assumptions based on incorrect data. And again, linking, if you have a CRM system such as HubSpot or something, it doesn't have to be really expensive, like you were saying, Laura. It doesn't have to be really expensive, but being able to link that into your Google Analytics or Google Adwords account starts to make these things, really, it just takes them to the next level. And again, with your AdWords and Google Analytics, there's an easy way within the admin settings that you can just link those two accounts and just allow them to start talking with each other. And I know I'll talk about it in a bit more detail later, but UTM codes and all of that element to make sure that, that data you're getting is actually a gold mine rather than, fool's gold, I guess. It could...
Yeah, I like that. Make it a gold mine, not fool's gold. Yeah. Yeah, I think the key things that you touched on there are breaking down the kind of marketing silos within an organization and looking at things holistically. And you've kind of given a couple of ways that people can do that. And then ensuring that you've got as much data from different sources, much good data, golden data, as you can from different sources in one place. so it's usable. I think the one thing that I would add to that when starting doing integrated marketing campaigns is test and learn. And I know that's something that we've done more together on the mailing campaigns, learning when's best to send an email after the DM piece to get the best uplift in response. And our approach to that as an agency is we try to create a hypothesis as to what we think should work well together. And that might be based on experience or industry information or published statistics. So an example might be if the challenge is we're not getting what we need from paid social, we're not getting the engagement that we need on social, we might say, well, if you have a mailing campaign go out, then we know that engagement with your brand's social content on average will increase by 30% in the couple of weeks following that mailing landing. If your mail started to plateau, then could we look at doing some mass media campaign, like a TV campaign beforehand, because on average response rates on mail go up by 20% following a TV campaign, because you've got the kind of legitimacy builder of TV and the call to action of mail. And then gradually kind of A/B testing and learning, adding in different channels, picking the ones that we think would be the quickest win first, adding in different channels and assessing how each one has an impact on that overall campaign. So I think between those three areas of data, looking at marketing holistically and test and learn, you've got a good base to start looking at starting integrated campaigns within an organization. I kind of touched on it there, on attribution. So this could be interesting because you can go all kinds of different ways with marketing attribution, but how do you guys currently attribute a sale when the individuals receive lots of different touch points? Louise, if we come to you first maybe from a more digital perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've probably got the easier way of attributing sometimes. I mean, thank God for the revival of QR codes, I think, for that kind of offline marketing. But yeah, I mean, with us, we've got UTM codes. So it's basically, for anyone who doesn't know, just a little snippet of code that will go on the end of your landing page. So Google has a really nice campaign URL builder. If you just Google Google's campaign URL builder, you can go in there and you can just start setting up your own UTM codes. And all you have to do is just go in. It'll ask you a couple of things. So you get to put the source. So from your source, you can either have Google, newsletter, email, that sort of thing. And then you can pick your medium. So whether it's a CPC, so are you paying for it? Is it a banner? Is it right-hand column? Is it from the email? So try to keep those two things consistent. And then you can kind of pick the campaign that it's for. So is it for, a certain product? So pick that product name. And then what you do is it gives you a nice little snippet of code on the end of that URL. And then what you can then do is just share that URL. So if you've got, say, for example, an email that you're building, just make sure that you put the URLs with those UTM codes in there. Again, if you're running an ad campaign, change the final destination URL to that one. And then what it will start to do is it will enter your Google Analytics code, and you can really start to understand where people have come from in a lot more detail than just, oh, they've come from a Google ad. Now the campaign, even the ad group, for example. Now, sometimes you can get that data, but it's not 100% reliable, or, if you're doing it with an affiliate and things like that. So UTM codes allow you to get that extra level of data entering into your Google Analytics account. So you've got universal analytics. You can find that between it's kind of acquisition campaigns and then all campaigns. And then Google has just released, which it loves doing, or about a year ago now, GA4. So that's going to be a new biggie that everyone's got to get around, and UTM codes still enter GA4, so you can still get that data there. So I mean, that's what we would kind of say to start with. Just get those UTM built, start using them, start knowing where they are in your account, and just you'll then get that extra layer of data to report on. If you're doing your monthly reports, you can start pulling that in. So it just gives you, again, like we said, that level of data that you didn't have previously.
Yeah, I guess that gives you a much more accurate vision of the customer journey through what points they've engaged with your brand. And then in terms of using that data once you've got it, I suppose, are you looking at what kind of order people typically go through on the digital channels? And then
so the good thing is you can kind of the hard thing is sometimes when it's really granular, you can't fully see a user's journey within GA because there's privacy issues and things like that. So, but you start to be able to tell, things like last click attribution, again, another element within your Google Analytics account that you can view. So that's a different element to the UTM codes, but last click attribution could tell you that, okay, someone clicked a paid ad and then 10 days later came and converted via organic. So depending on how you set up that last click attribution, and the way that we would use it is everything has to be a little bit of guesswork, which I think is why, Tom, that you mentioned testing is so important. And it's not nothing that enters even your Google Analytics account, you can't take it for gospel. You have to treat everything with a little bit of caution and be prod around and test, and even if you think you've set up your Google Analytics absolutely great, you could get a spam bot start to hit your Google Analytics, and if you've not got the right filter, then oh amazing, this looks great, and it's incorrect. So always be a little bit cautious, test around. And just you can start to see the user journeys using elements such as last click attribution, and Google has kind of behavioral flow charts in there. Sometimes they're great, sometimes I don't know if anyone on here has looked at them, but they are so higgledy-piggledy. They're a mess, but they can be interesting for those people who love data, like ourselves. You could probably spend hours in there just looking at them, but again, be cautious, test, and just be a bit nervous of what data is entering your account, that it is still correct.
Yeah, it's garbage in, garbage out, isn't it? It's knowing which bits of data are important to you as a marketing team and collecting that accurately in the right way, and then being able to use it. And coming to you, Laura, for the flying flowers integrated campaigns you do, is it a similar approach? Do you have a specific model you use, or is it going to be a kind of a campaign by campaign basis and you work it out manually?
It is a very similar approach to what Louise has just talked through. I think the build that we would have on it is the fact that we have that ability to match it back to our order and transactional information as well, which enables us to link it back to our offline activity. With this kind of, we could talk about this for hours. I won't bore everyone on the call, but this is a topic which it's so complicated, and you can talk about it for ages, going into the realms of things such as media mix modeling and complex models with your pre and post and tracking uplifts and behavior and so on. But the other approach that we take to it, which we've discussed a bit already, is some of the A/B testing, and it's testing as much as you can. So you might expose some of your customers to certain parts of your campaigns and hold back some of them from receiving those, and then you can look at the differences in the response rate and the uplift and start picking out which bits of your campaign have caused the uplift and where you're getting the best response rate from the different combinations of channels. The ability to be able to do that, though, is dependent on your ability to hold back certain groups of customers and then start measuring their behavior.
Yes, you've got to have a certain amount of volume there to begin with in order to be able to identify those trends, right?
Yeah. And again, this comes back to the point that Louise made about just being a bit careful with everything you're looking at with data. And I would always recommend putting significance levels on it, because you can make some bold claims, but if it's only 50 customers who have done something, then you might see over an 100% uplift. But if it's not significant, then it's almost irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the important thing is that I imagine attribution is going to be slightly different for all different companies and different brands, and also around what the purpose of the campaign is. You know, if it's for conversion and for buying, that's one thing to track. If it's for awareness and brand building, you might look at totally different metrics. But the crucial thing from my perspective is, before any marketing campaign, have a defined outcome objective, what you want to see, include some form of testing in there. What are you going to test? What do you want to learn from the campaign, as well as achieve hopefully the objective at the end of it? And then how are you going to go about measuring that? And once you have that in place prior to a campaign, you're in a much better position than saying, we've got to do what's next, Father's Day campaign. So, I mean, fine fathers, I dare say you'll have a Father's Day campaign going around. It won't be right, we're doing a Father's Day campaign, here's loads of stuff. It will be, we're doing a Father's Day campaign. We want to trial these one or two things, see what has the best effect. We want to go for these audiences, and we want to aim for this level of sales or this level of brand awareness or something like that. So you actually have something to measure against from the off. But those techniques that you've talked through there about, specifically around data significance and having the gold data, not fool's gold, because like you say, if you've got a sample size of 2, you can't really extrapolate that and use that across your marketing campaigns. You need wider data. And I guess that also, the bigger your customer base becomes and the more people you're testing with, probably the more things you can test at once. If you've got 1,000 customers, you can't test 5 different things at a given time. So that's definitely worth bearing in mind for some of the people on this call who might not have in the position that enviable position that you're in, of having quite a broad customer base. But no, thank you for that. That's really interesting. I want to touch on sustainability as well. I think it'd be a missed opportunity when we've got brands like Interflora and Flying Flowers who are very environmentally conscious. We've got B Corp in Celeste and Webmart as B Corp, so I think it's worth us touching on. But also how operating integrated campaigns can also help with sustainability. And we've already talked about it from kind of like a financial standpoint about not double paying for customers. But how can integrated marketing help reduce the overall impact on the environment of a campaign? So if we come to you, Louise, first.
So I mean, I had a really nice chat with a couple of people in the agency this morning and got a few different opinions from web dev and design and things like that. But in terms of kind of integrated campaigns, so when you're getting what channels are working, and like how you said, Laura, when you're realizing that you might be double paying, or that user journey is way longer than it needs to be. Now when you shorten that user journey, so if someone comes, rather you get a piece of mail and then you put the QR code in, you've gone straight to that landing page. Now you haven't gone on your phone, got up Google the brand name, gone to the site, looked around, and so what that does is that's putting a carbon load on everything, because you're having to load that web page 4 times. And so things like when you've got that integrated marketing campaign and you want them to go from A to B and you get them there quicker, then you have that, you're helping, because there's less carbon load of loading a web page and things like that. So that's how we kind of see that integrated marketing shortening that process. It's better for the user and it's better for the environment. So kind of that level is something that was quite interesting, and we had a great chat about that this morning, to be honest.
Yeah, and I bet it's nice on the wallet as well. If you've got a much shorter customer journey, you're having to pay for fewer touch points because they're more relevant ones to that customer.
And they're more likely to convert because they've not had to go around the houses to kind of get there. And, as we know, through a user journey, the more elements that you're sending them through, the less likely they are to convert. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And over to you, Laura, on the sustainability front.
Yeah, I would say ultimately the best way to reduce the environmental impact of any marketing, whether it's offline or online, is by ensuring that you're sending relevant customers, relevant messages to the right customers at the right time when they're most likely to make that purchase, and when it's marketing that's most useful to them as well. And in reality, it's what good marketing should be doing anyway, trying to understand that journey and not spamming a customer, but actually trying to be useful to a customer, because there's benefits to us as companies, but also benefits to customers by taking that approach.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what we're saying on, and in fact you mentioned almost word for word what I'd written down here for that, right message, right person, right time. Because if you can get that, then it's a nicer customer journey for the customer, it's lower cost for us, and it's better for the environment. And it's all about, it kind of comes back to it, using data, collecting the right data, storing it in the right way, and using it in the right way to improve customer journeys throughout. No, it's fantastic. And just before we kind of move on to questions, we've covered quite a lot in a short space of time. We've talked through what integrated marketing is. So we talked about it, campaign looking holistically, communicating with the right customer at the right time, with the right message through a variety of different channels, and linking those channels together so they play well together, and you get that kind of halo effect and boost in overall response rates. We talked about why it's important, both for boosting response rates and from a sustainability perspective. We looked at some of the barriers you have to overcome to be able to launch an integrated marketing campaign. So we talked about the silos within organizations. We talked about data and creative in the right way. We talked about test and learn. And then we looked at a little bit around attribution. So what kind of models we can put in place to be able to see which parts of our campaign are working hardest and working best together. And then we talked a little around sustainability and the benefits that having a proper integrated campaign can have on the environment. Is there any other tips, tricks, examples that you guys have that would be worth sharing with the people we have on the call before we put it out to some questions?
I've got a general comment about the sustainability theme, and just about the difference between offline and online marketing, because I think offline marketing, especially postal marketing, can have quite a bad rep, and it's because a customer has a physical thing in front of them where you know that materials have gone into making that and have gone into delivering it through the customer's letterbox as well. Whereas in reality, most marketing has an environmental cost to it, including digital marketing.
Yeah.
And I think customers' awareness of this is only going to be growing as people become more, rightly so, more and more concerned about the environment and everything that they do as an individual, the impact that has. And you can see this with companies that are cropping up where their USP is that they will delete old emails for you due to the environmental impact of the server cost of storing them. And the stats behind the carbon impact that it has are debatable. There's a book by Mike Berners-Lee called How Bad Are Bananas, where there's some misquoted stats around this, but they are very headline grabbing. And I do think customers are going to become more and more aware of this, and it's going to be more important that every company is taking steps to show that they are addressing this and they are doing marketing responsibly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And obviously us coming from a print background, we see that more than most. We see, you see a lot of companies go with the go green, go paperless message for, switching off paper bills to go for digital bills to benefit the environment. They don't mention the fact that it's a lot cheaper for them, and actually the overall impact on the environment is negligible, if at all, if you're doing it correctly. So I think, there's a big perception change coming and needed across customers. And I think as we get into the realms of accurate carbon calculation and reporting, there's going to be government compliance things that come up where you have to accurately calculate and report these things, particularly as we get closer to net zero goals. And if you can see on an email what the carbon cost of that email is, and you can see on a piece of mail what the carbon cost of that mail is, then I think you're exactly right. It'll start to shift perceptions to be more accurate to what they actually are. Yeah. Louise, I don't know if that's something you've experienced as well. I know Celestia quite good at this kind of stuff with digital?
Yeah, so I mean, she's our lead designer, and she website carbon.com. You can go on there and just test how much carbon it takes for you to load your website and things like that. Great thing that she said this morning, blue apparently is the most color hungry color when you're loading a web page and things. Quite interesting.
What's yellow like? How's yellow? That's what we need to know.
We'll have to double check it. We'll let everyone know after. And then another thing that they made like a massive point of is just less images. So, you know, if you are sending out an email with 1 million images in it, you know, that's going to be putting a lot more carbon pressure on the load and things like that. So there's a few small changes you can look to make to really, you know, benefit the planet. And that is the thing. Everyone, I think, thought digital. I mean, I thought, you know, a couple of years ago, digital was great, you know, we're not having an impact, and actually, no, we are. It is having an impact, and we have to remember that, and, you know, try and be as green as possible. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I see it from the environmental thing. What I wanted to make another little point of is obviously with the small businesses who doesn't have that level of data within their accounts to do those, you know, larger A/B tests and things like that. If you want to make any CRO or user experience updates, you can go to sites such as usertesting.com and get a sample of your audience to actually test that with real users. You'll get back a video, so you can still get that level of data even if you don't have that higher session level, or, you know, get 10-20 of your actual customers to test a new page design and things. So I just wanted to say, you know, it is still accessible for you to do that testing. And, you know, if you are a small local business, local SEO is going to be, you know, a massive joiner of offline and online, and local SEO running a few kind of local paid ads and things. You know, there still are things you can do there.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. Yeah, if you can't test on your own, there is data out there, you know, particularly, so we're Jitmail Platinum partners for direct mail, exactly the same way. So we can look at data for a mail order company mailing this audience, and we know on average what are the, you know, how do they physically engage with it, what are their commercial actions with it, and that at least gives us some data to work from to then start, you know, instead of just starting from first principles and trying to figure it out from scratch. There's some shortcuts that we can take even with smaller companies. Thank you very much for that. I will open it up to questions. If you've got any questions, you just throw them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them if we can. Wait for them all to come flooding through, as I'm sure. In the meantime, what I will say is we have at Webmark offering free marketing audits for qualifying customers at the moment. So if you are interested in us taking a look at your wider marketing mix, then please either drop me a message or get in touch with on our inquiries email, and we can get that set up for you. And also, as a little gift for the participants in this webinar, Laura, I don't know if you want to take it from here. Little gift from Flying Flowers.
Yeah, we have a discount code for anyone who is interested in either giving the brand a try if you've not tried it before, or if you're an existing customer, just to say thank you for joining. So if you use the code WebMart, all in capital letters, at the discount at the checkout stage, then you will get 25% off your next order, and that's valid for a week. So it's until midnight next Wednesday.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So I'm sure we'll all go off here onto Flying Flowers and get ourselves some nice bouquets like the one you've got there, which is in a slightly better state. Yeah. There you go. Product placement. Much nicer than the one I have behind me. Well, less said about that, the better. Okay, if any questions do crop up, then feel free to get in touch with us on LinkedIn. We do have another couple of webinars coming up in June and July, where we'll be talking more about sustainability. We'll have one on why and how to become a certified B Corp, and another on looking at specifically the carbon cost of marketing. So it'll be really interesting hot topics which are coming up in the next couple of months. So if there are no questions, we can leave it there, and I'll say thank you very much to Laura and Louise for giving up your time this morning and joining us for this chat. I think I've made a ton of notes, so I hope it's been useful for the folks who've attended as well. And I'll hopefully see you at our future webinars next month.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Great
Thanks,
stuff.
Tom. Thanks
Thank
everyone
you
for
all.
joining.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye. Bye.